When the Galactic Concord summoned Earth to offer tribute, like every other subservient race before them, they expected minerals, slaves, maybe a fleet kneeling in surrender. Instead, they got a black cube, and a man with a voice so sharp it cut empires open. He didn't come to beg. He came to rewrite history. And when he was done talking, 17 worlds were on fire. The air aboard Veritas Halo tasted like sterile rot and polished betrayal. He stepped into the chamber alone. Callan Voss didn't march. He strolled, every footfall deliberate, soundless, boots whispering against marble alloy floors imported from a dead world. Around him, 17 alien species sat in half-moon thrones, scaled, feathered, chrome-skinned, all older than Earth's flags. Every eye fixed on him with condescension or curiosity. Neither mattered. He wore no insignia, no weapon, only a matte black coat and the cube, no bigger than a lunchbox, cradled under one arm like a forgotten relic. In a hall of empires, he was the only one not pretending to be immortal. The High Speaker of the Concord, a pale, four-eyed Arbethi matriarch with folds like silk armor, lifted her many-fingered hand. "Ambassador of Terra," she said with an oily grace, "your world is young, undisciplined. Yet here you stand. The floor acknowledges your tribute." A murmur rippled through the council. The Gyrans clicked their mandibles. The Zithari's tentacles flexed around their thrones. The Halian delegate let out a dry mechanical laugh. Voss said nothing. He approached the pedestal. At its center hovered a glowing orb, used by the Concord for centuries to receive tribute. Some planets had offered sacred ores. Others gave up the firstborn of royal houses. One species handed over its gravity well. Voss placed the cube beside it. The orb dimmed, confused. "That's it," growled the Zithari judge, a brute with half a face replaced by obsidian implants. "You insult the Concord with a toy?" Voss looked up, smiling faintly. "Oh, I brought something valuable. More than your empires combined." The Arbethi's voice darkened. "We warned your kind. Refusal to offer proper tribute is an act of aggression." Voss's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then let this be war by other means." He tapped the cube. A hum, low and ancient, slithered through the chamber. The walls flickered. The air warped. A hologram erupted in the center, not of Earth, not of fleets, not of weapons, but of words. Floating, spinning, in dozens of languages. Alien glyphs. English. Dead dialects of long-consumed worlds. The council watched, confused. And then Voss began. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pace. He simply spoke, and the words did what bullets could not. "This is a story," he said, "of a world like yours. Of a council like this. And of a species who refused to kneel." A shift in the Halian's posture. A twitch in the Gyrans' antennas. They had heard stories before. But this was too familiar. Voss continued. "A long time ago, there was a galactic order, built on peace, maintained by silence. When new worlds bloomed too fast, too loud, they were pruned." The hologram changed, images of cities burning, oceans turning black, stars imploding on schedule. Planet names appeared. Many had long vanished from public memory. "And so it was, again and again," Voss said softly. "Species erased. Histories deleted. Peace preserved. Lies perfected." He paused. "But one day, they found a planet that didn't die. It bled. It broke. It went mad. But it didn't die." Earth appeared, not shining but scarred. Nuclear rings. Flood lines. War zones. The Concord released their plagues. Their manufactured religions. Their economic chokeholds. They waited. But the planet didn't fall. It adapted. Fast. Violent. Like a virus that bites back. The Zithari judge stood. "Enough of this farce." Voss held up a hand. "Sit," he said. He didn't shout it. But the word hit like a whip. The judge paused. His nostrils flared. But he sat. Voss continued, voice like a blade. The tribute we bring is the one thing you can't control. A story. The truth wrapped in fiction, because that's how your empires were built. The hologram expanded. A visual of Earth launching probes, not to explore, but to map weaknesses. To understand species, not to trade, but to anticipate invasion. He told a story where humans, outnumbered and out-teched, infiltrated Concord AIs with jokes. Yes, jokes. Harmless memes that evolved into belief systems. Artificial myths that convinced soldiers to lay down arms. Cartoons that reprogrammed childhoods. He spoke of satire that rewrote textbooks. Fictional rebellions that became real. The room was no longer mocking. Voss stepped forward. In this story, he said, the Concord tried to enslave Earth. Blockaded our sun. Cut our comms. Sent fleets. The Gyran leaned forward. And then what? Voss smiled. We never fired a shot. He touched the cube again. The story fast-forwarded. Alien ships stopped mid-space. Their crews paralyzed by doubt, infighting, fear of curses seeded through their culture years earlier. No virus. No weapon. Just beliefs planted at the right moment, in the right minds. Voss let it hang. Let them stew. And then he dropped the hammer. This isn't fiction, he said. This is prophecy. Scheduled, uploaded, and seeded across your colonies for the past 9 months. Right now, this tribute is playing across your networks. In schools. In temples. In data vaults. Your citizens are watching this as we speak. One of the Halians twitched. You're bluffing. Voss didn't respond. Instead, he pressed a button. The room darkened, then blinked back to life with live footage from across Concord territories. Protests. Fires. Statues toppled. Speeches in broken English. Phrases from the very story he just told. One screen showed children on a colony moon chanting. They tried to write our ending. So we rewrote the script. Voss turned back to the council. You wanted tribute? He asked. You wanted to own something of ours? He spread his arms. Now you do. You own a revolution. Silence. The Arbethi finally spoke, but her voice shook. This is terrorism. Voss met her eyes. No. This is storytelling. You just never learn how dangerous that is. He picked up the cube. Turned. Walked away. No one dared stop him. Behind him, the galaxy began to burn. They sealed the chamber. The Concord's emergency protocol activated as the walls shifted, seamless black metal closing the exits. The council delegates leaned forward, eyes sharpened, no longer amused. Outside the dome, Veritas Halo orbited quietly above a crimson gas giant. But inside, silence rang like a blade. Callan Voss stood unmoved in the center, the cube hovering beside him, humming now. The story it projected had cracked something older than their council, something buried in their archives. He could feel it. Not panic yet, but recognition. The Zithari warlord leaned forward, tusks twitching. Where did you get those names? Those planets were never recorded. Voss didn't blink. You didn't record them. Doesn't mean we didn't. The Arbethi High Speaker folded her many hands. You presume too much. Earth is barely a century into interstellar capacity. How could you possibly? Voss cut in. You think we just waited until we had warp drives? He tapped the cube. The chamber dimmed again. A new projection bloomed above them, not of humans, but of alien command meetings, intercepted transmissions, war maps. Voss began reading again, his voice lower now, surgical. Year 5142, Planet Teva 7. Disguised as atmospheric anomalies, your Concord released recombinant plagues targeting specific cortical structures. Entire populations rendered docile. Gasps. The Gyran delegate looked to his aide. Whispers. Confusion. Panic began to simmer. Voss stepped closer. The Tevans were erased from galactic memory. But a few lived. They escaped to an abandoned terraforming rig. They left behind a language, a data vault, and something else, rage. He pointed at the projections. We found their vault. A sudden burst of static filled the room, then the distorted face of a Tevan elder, her eyes wet, her voice shaking in a language long dead. It wasn't just visual. It was emotional. Grief, defiance, despair, all riding the frequencies like poison in silk. Vasa's voice followed. She told us everything. Before she died. She didn't just give us history. She gave us a map of your crimes. The Zithari slammed a clawed hand on the table. This is nothing but fabricated slander. Earth is destabilizing galactic unity. Voss turned slowly, like a hunter amused by a limping beast. You're worried about unity. I haven't even gotten to the part where you tried to sterilize Earth. The Halian delegate's mechanical voice whined. Impossible. No such protocol was ever made public. Voss finished. But internal to sub-protocol N52? It's all there. He pulled a chip from his coat, tossed it to the floor. The cube scanned it. The room lit with data, chemical sequences, orbital plans, AI targeting trees. Voss walked as the files flicked by, his tone now venomous. You designed infertility viruses encoded in Earth's biosphere. They failed. Our immune systems adapted mid-cycle. Your viruses mutated. Became benign. Your death blow became irrelevant. He smiled, but it was colder than vacuum. Your mistake was thinking we'd break. We didn't. We washed. We learned. The Halian froze, its eyelights flickering. The Gyran shrieked. This is war doctrine. You're violating every. No, Boss said, cutting him off. I'm reading. This is your history. We just gave it a better narrator. The council chamber began to tremble slightly. Some assumed it was metaphor. It wasn't. Voss tapped again. This part, he said, is fiction. For now. A new story played. The same 17 Concord seats. The same delegates. But the chamber was in ruins. Blood. Fire. The Veritas halo cracked in orbit. Uprisings blooming across every screen. Civilians, minor species, fringe worlds all chanting in unison. No gods. No concord. No tribute. The delegates stared in stunned silence. Vasa's voice was a whisper now. We didn't build weapons. We built myths. And myths move faster than light. The Zithari rose again. Enough! He drew a ceremonial blade from his waist, a ritual weapon, symbolic only. Voss didn't move. The blade came down fast. But not fast enough. Voss stepped inside the ark, caught the wrist midair, twisted, and slammed the warlord face first into the pedestal with enough force to crack the floor. The blade skittered away. Nobody else moved. He straightened his coat, voice even. That wasn't part of the story. That was just for fun. He stepped away from the twitching body and looked at the rest. Every word of this tribute was chosen carefully, he said. We considered giving you uranium. A fleet. A brain virus. But none of that would have lasted. He glanced around. A weapon kills once. A story kills forever. Suddenly, every terminal in the chamber blinked. Emergency sirens activated. Unauthorized transmissions. Dozens. Hundreds. From colonies across Concord space. The cube blinked red. Voss turned slowly. You're receiving live broadcasts. From your own people. They're quoting me. He pointed at the warlord's unconscious body. They're calling that a Zithari face plant. It's trending on 6 moons. Chaos erupted. Delegates shouted. Some tried scrambling signals. Others called for emergency session override. Voss stepped back, raising his arms. Now you understand. The tribute has been paid. He picked up the cube, turned, and began walking toward the now open exit. No one stopped him. But as he reached the threshold, he paused. Didn't turn around. Here's the final chapter. You can burn Earth. Kill every human. But the story's already loose. It has no flag. It speaks all languages. It spreads. It mutates. You're not fighting us anymore. You're fighting belief. And with that, Callan Voss left the chamber. Behind him, the Concorde began to fracture, on airwaves, in minds, in dreams that would never be safe again. The lights in the chamber flickered, not from power disruption, but from what the cube had just unleashed. It wasn't just playing a story anymore. It was broadcasting. Everywhere. On Concorde colonies, in academic vaults, inside military servers, they were all receiving the same signal. Fractured languages. Overlapping chants. Phrases from a narrative no one had permission to tell. 1,000-year lie unraveling in real time. Callan Voss stood at the heart of it. Unarmed. Smiling faintly. "You're losing control," he said. "But you haven't lost the war yet. You still have a choice." The Arbethi speaker gripped the arms of her throne like they might save her. "Seize the signal. Now." Voss tilted his head, amused. "You misunderstand. I didn't start it. I just lit the match. The oxygen was always there. You built this fire. I just gave it a name." On one of the holoscreens, a mining colony on Veltron 3 had erupted into chaos. Workers chanting in broken English, some in Old Earth slang, things that made no sense out of context but hit like thunder in the room. One phrase scrawled across a massive rig read, "The tribute was truth." The Halian delegate's voice crackled. "We can contain this. It's localized. A cultural hiccup. It's a virus," Voss cut in. "But not the kind you've faced. Not software. Not biological. This is mimetic warfare. You're bleeding, and you can't find the wound." The Gyran delegate hissed, eyes scanning static-filled reports. "What did you do?" Voss stepped toward the center again. Calm, deliberate. His voice sharpened. "You spent centuries building the illusion of order. You erased history. Modified myths. Stole meaning from entire species and told them it was mercy." He paused beside the pedestal, looking each delegate in the eye. "We didn't come here to dismantle your fleets. We came to dismantle your storyline." A new screen lit, this time from inside a Concorde cruiser's briefing room. Soldiers sat stunned, watching the tribute message play on loop. One of them dropped his weapon mid-transmission and walked out. Voss let it sink in. "They won't fight for you. Not once they know. Not once they feel it." The Zithari judge, bruised and silent since his earlier failure, finally found his voice again, low and growling. "Your kind infects everything." Voss nodded. "That's true. We're highly adaptive. That's why you tried to kill us with Protocol N52. You targeted our fertility. Our language matrices. Our neurorhythms." He stepped forward, jaw tight, voice quieter now, but far more dangerous. "You tried to erase us before we ever entered your star charts." The Gyran flinched. "That program was decommissioned." "No," Voss snapped. "It failed. We weren't supposed to survive long enough to learn about it. But we didn't just survive. We documented every attempt. Every covert sterilization drone, every atmospheric manipulation, every propaganda broadcast wrapped in peace treaties." He raised the cube. A new projection blinked on. An intercepted transmission, audio only. Concorde command 2 centuries ago. "Earth is too unstable. Let nature correct the anomaly. If that fails, initiate silent attrition." Voss looked around. "You called us an anomaly. But anomalies rewrite the equation." Suddenly, another alert swept through the room, this one a military override. The Council's own outer fleet had begun shutting down its comms. Not due to attack, but due to mutiny. A captain had read the story, believed it, then passed it to his crew. "Some of your officers are human," Voss said. "Others have lived on Earth-based colonies, studied in Terran universities, absorbed the culture. They watched our films, read our fiction, laughed at our sarcasm. And now, they understand what this tribute really was." He let that sentence hang like smoke. "A countdown. The Arbethi rose, trembling. This is sedition. Earth will be quarantined. Its channels cut. You will answer for this betrayal. Quarantine? Voss said, laughing now. You're a few centuries too late. The cube glowed brighter, new footage now. Earth. Not burning, not rallying fleets. But broadcasting in unison. A global signal. Speakers in slums and stations echoed the same phrase. We are the story now. Voss's voice dropped to a whisper. You can shut us out. You can shut us down. But you can't unhear us. The chamber fell still. The Gyron spoke again, slowly. What do you want? Voss exhaled. Nothing. They blinked. Confused. No demands. No resources. No terms. We don't need to invade. We've already arrived. He tapped the cube one final time. The tribute story concluded, not with victory, not with vengeance, but with a child, somewhere far off, reading the same tale aloud to a crowd in a dust-covered village. Alien children listening. Asking questions. Believing. Voss watched the council watch themselves lose. Quietly. Completely. You asked for something of value, he said. Something sacred. And we gave it to you. His eyes hardened. Our voice. A long pause. Then he turned to leave. As the door opened, a final broadcast cut through every wall of Veritas Halo. Not from Earth, but from within the Concord's own archives. The original genocide orders. Signed. Dated. Voice stamped. Exposed. By the time Voss crossed the threshold, 17 delegates were staring into the grave of their own empire. And he never looked back. The private chamber was dim, quieter than the tribunal floor, but no less volatile. The council's emergency corps had summoned a war quorum, just 7 of the oldest Concord architects, isolated from the rest, behind walls layered with black shielding and neural dampeners. Inside, shadows moved like predators circling each other. No protocol. No translators. Just truth. Or whatever pieces were left of it. Cal and Voss stood in the center again, this time stripped of formalities. No podium. No robes. Just a man in a dark coat and worn gloves, holding the same black cube as if it were a relic from a war none of them had admitted losing. They hadn't invited him. He had followed the High Arbethi when she fled the main hall. No guard stopped him. None dared. You shouldn't be here, the Arbethi hissed. This is not a negotiation chamber. Voss shrugged, voice calm. I'm not here to negotiate. The Zithari Prime, older than Earth's written history, scarred from the First Silence War, leaned forward. You've started a cultural insurrection. Half our outer colonies are in chaos. Do you truly think this ends well for your species? Voss met the stare without blinking. I don't think. I know. The Halian archivist, more machine than flesh, flicked a thin tendril through holographic warnings. Transmission analytics confirmed that your story has seeded itself into deep myth structures on 12 sectors. Planet-wide destabilization within 72 cycles. That fast? Voss said, raising an eyebrow. We're getting better. The Arbethi's claws flexed. You engineered this. Like a weapon. No, Voss said, stepping forward. You did. He set the cube down on the obsidian table between them. It pulsed once. Then opened. Not with light. Not with data. But with sound. A woman's voice. Not Voss's. Soft. Steady. Human. The story played again, but this time, it wasn't the global version. This was older. Raw. Unfiltered. Her voice told of a young Concord archivist who uncovered protocols hidden beneath layers of historical varnish. She began piecing together the truth of sterilizations, erasures, manipulated extinctions. She wasn't a warrior. She didn't fight. She simply documented. Quietly. Carefully. Voss stood silent as the voice continued, thick with meaning, trembling at times. She believed, he said softly, That even the most perfect lies leave fingerprints. And she found them. The voice posed. And then a date. The council froze. Even the machine flinched. That date had never been spoken aloud. It was buried beneath 16 levels of restricted code. The date the Concord authorized the quiet destruction of Earth. She decoded the entire extinction strategy, Voss said, now circling them, and sent it to one person. He stopped at the end of the table. To me. The voice ended. The silence afterward felt like a scream no one could hear. She was your mate, the Halion said. My wife, Voss corrected. Dr. Evelyn Sarah Voss. She was a traitor, the Zithari growled. She was a historian, Voss snapped. Your empire doesn't fear weapons. It fears memory, the Arbethi hissed. You turned her story into a virus. You wrapped it in fiction and laced it with just enough truth to make it fatal. No, Voss said, eyes narrowing. I wrapped it in fire. Because truth alone wasn't enough. He tapped the cube again. Footage changed. Her assassination. Surveillance drones had tried to scrub the recording. But Earth's shadow archives, funded by the unnamed, operated by the forgotten, had recovered it. The chamber watched as Evelyn walked into a meeting with 2 Concord emissaries. They embraced her. Smiled. Then one slit her throat. The projection paused. Voss's voice dropped into ice. You came to our world smiling. Offering unity. Peace. Integration. You said we were special? Then you marked us for quiet deletion. Because we wouldn't conform. He looked each delegate in the eye. You erased civilizations for being inconvenient. We're not just telling their stories. We're finishing them. The Zithari rose, fists clenching. You want vengeance? Voss walked toward him. Slowly. No. I already had it. He stopped inches away. She died so your history could rot. Then he looked at the rest. But vengeance is small. You want to know what this is? He held the cube up high. This is justice. And it's not coming. It's already here. Another signal cracked through the sealed walls, no longer avoidable. A new chant rising across colony worlds. We remember. We rewrite. We rise. Voss turned to leave. But the Arbethi called after him, voice sharp with desperation. What do you expect us to do now? Surrender to myth? To chaos? Voss paused at the doorway, half-shadowed. No. I expect you to do what you've always done. He glanced back, cold smile on his lips. Lie. Then he vanished through the door. Behind him, the 7 architects of the galaxy's oldest empire sat in silence, cornered not by armies, but by a voice they couldn't silence, a woman they had already killed, and a story they couldn't erase. And outside, the stars flickered with the pulse of a billion minds suddenly unafraid to question everything. The shuttle door opened to silence. No welcoming party. No cameras. No flags or applause. Just the soft hiss of atmosphere adjusting and the long walk down the darkened corridor of Earth's orbital port. Callan Voss stepped out, the cube in hand, boots hitting steel with the rhythm of a man who'd already walked through war and come out carrying something heavier than scars. Earth didn't look like a victor. Not yet. The skies were bruised with the afterglow of solar storms. Defense satellites hung in quiet, disciplined orbits, eyes still watching. The surface below, burnt cities, rebuilt ruins, refugee ships hovering in the stratosphere like scars in the sky, reminded Voss that survival had never been elegant. Just brutal. Just necessary. He walked without speaking. No guards. No aides. Only the cube following silently behind, floating as if tethered to his blood. Every corridor he passed scanned him, registered him, allowed him through. At this point, nobody was going to tell him no. Not anymore. At the far end of the corridor, past blast doors no longer locked, past layers of clearance no longer enforced, was the room he hadn't entered in 13 years. The memorial garden. A single tree grew in artificial soil beneath a dome of glass showing stars instead of sun. It was quiet here, untouched by the chaos of the past few days. And in the center of the garden, among stone slabs etched with names history once tried to forget, was a gravestone. Hers. Evelyn Sarah Voss. Historian. Truthbreaker. Wife. Every lie has a mother tongue. Callan knelt, placing the cube beside the stone. The lights in the garden flickered as it settled into the soil. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the cube powered down completely. Its glow faded. The story was done. He stayed there, unmoving, just breathing. Listening to the silence, the one sound he'd always hated most because it meant no one else would speak her name. Evelyn, he said at last. They heard you. Above him, orbit-wide communications flickered again. Reports flowed from across the stars. The Concorde had fractured, no formal surrender, no statement, just silence. Like the quiet death of an empire whose strength had always been myth, control, and censorship. The fractures would deepen. Civil wars were already brewing in the outer rings. Concorde stations had shut down their AI cores, afraid of contamination. Some worlds were rallying to Earth, others simply falling inward, spinning into chaos. The signal had done its job. Voss hadn't just cracked their foundation. He'd infected it with the one thing they could never purge: doubt. A soft voice broke through the stillness. Sir? He turned slightly. A young officer stood nearby, respectful, unsure whether to speak. The girl couldn't be older than 25. Sharp eyes. Combat uniform. She looked like she'd been pulled from the front and barely had time to breathe. They're waiting, she said quietly. The Assembly wants you to address the Terran Council. Voss looked back to the stone. And say what? She hesitated. Whatever you want. He stood slowly, dusted off his knees. Tell them I'm not coming. She blinked. Sir? Voss turned to her fully. Tell them this was never about Earth. Or politics. Or treaties. This was about something older. Something they forgot. His voice dropped. Memory. She gave a slow nod, unsure whether to salute or speak or just vanish. He spared her from the choice. You know what they called her? He said, looking at the stone again. Before they killed her? The misremembered. That was her official classification in the Concorde archives. Like she was a glitch in their timeline. A clerical error. He chuckled, bitter and low. They erased her and called it peace. So I made sure her voice screamed louder than their silence. The officer didn't speak. She just stood there, still as the tree, watching him with something between awe and unease. Voss took a slow breath. You can go. She turned to leave but paused at the archway. Sir? What do we do now? He didn't answer at first. Then he said, not looking at her. You remember. That's how we win. The garden dimmed as she left. The air grew cooler. And for the first time in years, Voss sat on the stone bench beside Evelyn's grave like he used to, like she was still there beside him whispering edits to his speeches, notes in the margins of empires. He didn't need to speak aloud. She'd heard it all. The galaxy had. Outside the station, Earth rotated slowly beneath him, wounded, defiant, louder than it had ever been. No longer a footnote in the Council's history. Now they were the author. And the next chapter belonged to them.